Hi there. This is Meredith Mendelson, co-founder of Savvy Survivor. Savvy Survivor is a place where we are trying to support people who've completed their treatment, people who are living with cancer, as well as providers and caregivers. And today our guest is Lisa Thompson. Welcome, Lisa.
Hey, Meredith. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself and your connection to an experience of cancer survivorship or the post-treatment phase.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with breast cancer with DCIS in 2015 as the result of a routine mammogram. So leaving that appointment, being concerned about having cancer was the least important thing on my mind that day. It wasn't in my consciousness that could be an outcome of that appointment. And so things changed very dramatically for me very quickly. No one expects, of course, to be diagnosed with cancer, but for me, as an athletic person, it was extra difficult to accept that diagnosis. And so I sort of immediately went into this mode of figuring out the best team of people that I could work with to help me fight cancer and ultimately beat it. And that sort of led me here today.
Sure. And so, I think if you could tell us a little bit about your adventures, right, dramatically close to your last surgery, and just, kind of describe that for us a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm living in Seattle. Mountaineering is an important part of my life, and I was just getting serious about mountaineering when I was diagnosed with cancer. So I had just planned my first trip to climb a mountain in Nepal, and I'm fortunate that I was able to still make that trip. And after doing so, I came back and I finished reconstruction and decided that cancer taught me a lot of things. And one thing is that life is really, really short and it's out of our control. And so that really pushed me to decide that I wanted to climb Mount Everest as soon as I could. And so I shared that with my doctors, and they, I think they understood me and why that was important to me. They also were sort of like, well, okay, we'll see how this goes. So I left for Nepal to climb Everest 3 weeks after my final reconstruction. And seems like a very tight window, but I was fortunate that everything worked out well.
Wow. And were there any role models or guides for you in terms of doing something so physical, so after surgery?
I think it was mostly just being stubborn that drove me to pick a goal that seems a bit audacious. If you want me to do something, tell me that I can't or that I'm not capable, and that will drive me to prove you wrong and to push myself in order to accomplish something that maybe is unexpected. So my father has always been a very important person to me in my life. He actually died of lung cancer shortly after I climbed Mount Everest. But prior to that trip, he used to always tell me to just put one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, and keep moving forward. And so that's been sort of a mantra that I've had in my life that keeps me motivated and moving.
So knowing that you were undertaking this significant physical activity and having no real experience or, hearing from your team that there was no experience they could provide around this, how did that affect your selection of your medical team?
So I think this is a really important question. And it was important to me that I choose healthcare providers that understood me and knew what my goals were and were there to help me achieve them in spite of having cancer, and achieve them in a healthy way. It's not to say to ignore the diagnosis or treatment, but I needed people who understood that I was an athlete and that I had important goals on the horizon, and that I wasn't willing to let cancer dictate those goals. And so when I interviewed providers, I really focused on people who took the time to ask me about me, to understand what was important to me in my life. I really wasn't interested in working with someone who, at an introductory meeting, didn't take the time to ask those questions. And so I feel very fortunate for the team that I worked with, because I feel like they got me and they were there to help me work through cancer, beat cancer, and still be me and be able to do the things that I loved at the end.
And how do you support people now that, you've been finished with treatment a couple of years?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're going through cancer, I at least didn't think about what my life would be like on the other side of it. I didn't think about how it would change and how my priorities would shift and how I would kind of reconfigure how I spent my time and who I spent time with. And I didn't think about this responsibility that I now feel like I have to help other people who are fighting cancer. And so I feel really fortunate that through my website, people regularly reach out to me from across the world. It's often people who have children. I just spoke to someone last week whose 22-year-old son was diagnosed with lymphoma. And so I was able to connect with him and offer some encouragement. People often are mountaineers who felt just like I did, that I love climbing, I love being in the mountains, and now I have this thing in my life that threatens to take that away from me. Where do I go to find support and help? And so I really, all of those interactions to me are like a blessing. It's an opportunity for me to get to share with other people some of the things that got me through cancer. And then more locally, I've recently started working with Team Survivor Northwest, which is an organization that really aligns fitness and being active with fighting cancer. And those are two things that are really important to me. So I'm fortunate to help them with some upcoming climbs in the Cascades this summer. And then I'll speak at an event that they have coming up in October in Seattle too.
What suggestions might you give others who want to set a lofty goal, as you have a few times now, in terms of physicality?
Yeah, I what I've learned kind of the hard way is to not let other people define what I am capable of. There have been times in my life when I set a big goal and I expressed it, and someone said, "Oh, you can't do that. It's too difficult for you, or you don't know where to start." And I don't listen to that anymore. I respect that opinion and that feedback. But I get to define what I'm capable of. And if there's a little voice inside of me that says, I think I can do this. I don't know exactly how, but I believe that I'm capable enough and strong enough to achieve this goal. I hang on to that tiny little voice inside of me that believes that I can do it.
What advice might you give to providers who have patients who are finished with treatment but want to, kind of stretch themselves and do something new, or, just something that they maybe did before they were diagnosed?
Yeah, I think it is important to listen to your patients and to encourage them to try things that might still seem scary. I know so after I had a mastectomy, I felt like I couldn't do pull-ups, for example. I just had this mental block that like my arms are going to pop out of their sockets or something crazy. And I needed, which is completely irrational, but I needed that support from my doctors to say, you can do it. You listen to your body very well. Try it. If it doesn't feel right, stop. But don't stop doing the things that you love just because your body's a little bit different than it was 3 months ago. Try it.
Was there any particular kind of self-talk that you did when you were actually on the climbs to kind of, when you started to be worried about, how the cancer treatment might affect your abilities?
Mm-hmm. I thought about that a lot before before I climbed Everest and before I've climbed other mountains since then, because self-talk, I think, is so important, not just when you're doing something hard like climbing a mountain, but throughout the course of our day, there's obstacles that get in our way that are frustrating. And so on the mountain in particular, I told myself that I am strong, and I just repeated those words over and over and over again on days when things felt difficult, or if I felt tired or cold or whatever it was. Those were words that I really turned to. And I think that, it's important to realize it's positive self-talk, right? I want that positivity in my mind and around me. I don't want to waste my time thinking or saying something that's negative. And so anything that I could turn to or pull from as an example of something positive, I really hung on to.
Yeah, great. So people will be able to access information about your website, photos from your climbs, any other resources that you would like to provide right underneath your video. So we'll be sure to have those posted very quickly.
Excellent.
Anything else you'd like to share with us today?
I think I would just repeat the importance of continuing to set your own boundaries and surrounding yourself with people that encourage you to do that and to keep moving forward, because you are strong no matter what comes your way.
Super. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience and what you've learned along the way.
My pleasure. Thanks, Meredith.
All right.